Morning, good afternoon. I'm slightly out of sync on my watch still because I just landed at midnight at Mumbai, took the 3 a.m. flight, landed here at 5:30 a.m. Around 10:30, I came into Electrama thinking that I'll watch around what's happening here, when I suddenly realized that Mr. Singhal, who was supposed to make the presentation, isn't well and is not able to do this. So I was just asked about an hour back to make the presentation. So thinking about this whole subject of segregating carriage from the content, I thought, well, I probably am supposed to be the segregated carriage for the content which Mr. Singhal wants to deliver. So with that introduction, I'll try to speak briefly about the experience in the UK on the segregation of carriage versus content. My role, I have been a director with Utilitia Energy, so I will talk mostly about the experience in the UK, and Mr. Babel has kindly consented to sort of relate that to the Indian experience from there on. So coming first of all, just to clarify the subject for those who are relatively new to the subject, what is carriage and what is content? Obviously, carriage is the entity that carries the service, so or carries or maintains the infrastructure. So, for example, in this context, the network operator, which carries the wires business, and the content is the service that is delivered, and the service, in this case, for example, being electricity. In the context of UK, of course, the deregulation has happened to the extent that it is a fully deregulated market since 2001, and also it is both electricity and gas, which is combined as an energy source, which is the service that is provided by the retailers. So basically, what does the separation of the network operation from the retail mean, very, very briefly, is obviously the network operators concentrate on the business of managing the infrastructure that carries the energy, whereas the retailers would focus on A, buying energy on a wholesale trading market, B, recruiting new customers, and providing them with the service, maintaining the customer relationship, providing them with the bills, and also provide data to a settlement system which allows them to settle on the buying of energy. Now, quickly a bit of history about what happened in the UK. I think it all started, way back in 1986 when Mrs. Maggie Thatcher, the then Prime Minister, first announced the privatization of the then British Gas Corporation, a huge monolithic organization which was privatized those days. That sort of kicked the process of what would eventually lead into complete deregulation in the market. So it took some time. At that time, the regulator obviously was also brought into the picture. The Office of the Gas and Electricity Regulation came into picture, and the regulator's role was to keep a supervisory overview about on the operations of this corporation, of the entity. Now, by 1996, 10 years on, all the gas market was made sort of open, in the sense that all the other big what was the regional electricity companies in the UK, the RECs, were allowed to go and recruit customers. So they started recruiting several gas customers which belonged to the then British Gas. So that way it started rolling on. In 1998, electricity was also deregulated so that people could recruit customers across. And in 2001, the regulator and the government announced a complete deregulation rollout. That means from 2001, it was possible to compare prices on a continuous basis for the benefit of consumers, and consumers were allowed to switch their retailers pretty much like as you can do today in this country, for example, for telecom or some other services. So that was the beginning of a complete deregulation which happened. So what was the benefit of this deregulation? I think most important benefit of the deregulation that we could see was A, better services to customers, B, reduction of costs, reduction of prices. As an example, now the prices became more competitive and reflective of the market situations. As an example, in the last 1 year, the British consumers have seen a reduction in their energy prices in the order of between 10 to 15%. Because of the competitive scenario, the retailers were reducing and are still in the process. There is still more, it's in the offing, because with the reducing cost of energy, particularly with whatever is happening with, with the prices of gas, the cost of energy has gone down, and that is being passed on to the end consumer because of the nature of the competitive market. So that's one obvious benefit. The second benefit has been the quality of service, because now the retailers focus on the service. The network operators focus on creating and running an infrastructure in the most efficient manner, and the retailers are focusing on providing a service to the customer. And you'll be surprised by the extent to which the service is sensitive, or your ability to retain customers is sensitive to the quality of service. I know for example, in situations where, for example, you could relate that, for example, we had a problem with our telephone systems, and some of the phone calls, all the phone calls that come in for resolving customer issues, if you're not able to handle them, you can immediately see for that, within a few days of that, the number of customers decreasing. So customers are allowed to switch. Because today in the UK, about 15% customers are switching every year. This number has actually now become a more conservative and reduced to what used to be almost 22% of switching every year. So we're seeing this activity because of the freedom of choice that the consumers are being able to exert. Also given us the opportunity in this scenario, the evolution of the niche players, the smaller retailers, because of the existence of what we call as the big six in the UK, the six big electricity and gas retail companies, there is also the evolution of a plethora of smaller retailers who are providing very niche services. Somebody focusing on green energy, a few others focusing on providing prepay services only, others focusing on SME segment only. So there are niches that people are trying to build to provide the service that you want, which is tailored to your needs as a customer. And therefore, they are able to provide the right service to the right customer. So that's the other thing that we are seeing with all of this. So obviously, there is more open competition, and there is more market-reflective pricing that we are seeing more and more. With all of this, the obvious question comes is what are the challenges? How do we ensure that such a system works effectively? How would that be guaranteed? Because there are, obviously, a full market deregulation doesn't come without its challenges. One obvious, when the deregulation happened, obviously, the role of the regulator, a central regulator's role, becomes very, very important. Because the regulator has to ensure that the systems are fair. One of the things which happened right at the beginning, after 2001, when complete deregulation was allowed, was that the generating companies and the retail companies were asked to completely isolate their businesses from each other. Obviously, that was done in order to prevent the retail companies having a control over the wholesale prices of energy. So the wholesale price of energy had to be made fairly and equitably available to all the retailers. And that was a very important role that had to be assured, and the retailer had to play that role very, very creatively. So that's one important thing. The other two very, very important thing, and not that while deregulation started in 2001, not that it didn't have its challenges and complexities. One of the most important things to make it successful is how good is the settlement system. Because as you trade energy, and you sell electricity to customers who could be geographically distributed anywhere, and who could be changing their suppliers or their retailers any day. Today you are allowed within 3 weeks of time by which if I make a phone call to say that, hey, I don't like your service, I want to change to another retailer, I'm allowed 3 weeks. And within 3 weeks, my service will be changed. Now, in order to assure that the entire settlement system works effectively, you need a nationwide, a very effective data transfer mechanism and a settlement system. And this settlement system has evolved in the UK over the years. Not that it didn't have its difficulties. I think countries like India has the advantage, or other countries who are adopting it later have the advantage of taking the lessons from that and being able to make that technology jump in order to make it much more powerful, much more successful. The other very important thing is the availability. The third most important thing is the availability of a good trading mechanism, a trading exchange, which allows a fair and equitable buying of wholesale energy on a week ahead or a day ahead basis. Because that also again ensures that the retailers are able to compete by proper hedging of their energy buying in advance.
10 minutes over.
So with that background, thank you very much for your time.